Tasha Williams was a 24-year-old barista who lived in the heart of Chicago. Her life wasn't extraordinary, but it was hers, and she tried to make the most of it. Every morning she woke up early, brewed her own cup of coffee, and headed to work at a small cafe nestled on a busy street corner. The cafe was always buzzing with activity, students cramming for exams, business people rushing through meetings over lattes, and tourists snapping photos of their cappuccinos before heading off to explore the city. Tasha loved watching people come and go. It gave her a sense of connection to something bigger than herself. Despite her cheerful demeanor, Tasha often felt like she blended into the background. She wasn't one of those people who commanded attention when they walked into a room. Instead, she preferred staying quiet, observing others and letting her thoughts swirl inside her head. What many didn't know about Tasha was that she dreamed of becoming a writer someday. In fact, during slow shifts at the cafe, she'd jot down snippets of ideas in a worn-out notebook she kept stashed under the counter. Most of these notes were fragments of stories inspired by the customers she served: the elderly man who ordered the same black coffee every day without fail, the young couple whispering sweet nothings over shared pastries, or the tired mom trying to keep her toddler entertained while sipping tea. These moments fascinated Tasha because they reminded her how everyone carried their own unique story, even if they seemed ordinary on the surface. On this particular afternoon, Tasha finished her shift later than usual. It had been a hectic day. Broken espresso machine, an endless line of impatient customers, and a coworker calling in sick meant she had to pick up extra hours. By the time she clocked out, her feet ached, and her mind felt foggy. Still, she couldn't wait to get home, change into comfortable clothes, and maybe write a little before bed. Writing was her escape, her way of making sense of the world around her. As she stepped outside the cafe, the cool breeze hit her face, refreshing after hours spent indoors. The streets of Chicago were alive with energy. Cars zoomed past, horns blaring as drivers navigated the crowded roads. Pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks, some chatting animatedly on phones, others lost in thought. Street vendors called out to passers-by, offering everything from hot pretzels to handmade jewelry. Tasha took it all in, savoring the rhythm of the city she called home. She loved how unpredictable life could be here. You never knew what you might encounter. A street performer juggling fire sticks, a sudden rain shower sending everyone scrambling for cover, or a stranger striking up a conversation that stayed with you long after it ended. As Tasha turned onto Elm Street, a familiar route she took almost every day, she noticed a slight commotion ahead. A group of people had gathered near the intersection, pointing and shouting. At first, she assumed it was just another argument between drivers, a common sight in the city. But something about the scene caught her attention. There was an urgency in the air, a tension that made her pause. Curious, she slowed her pace, craning her neck to see what was happening. That's when she spotted her, a woman standing in the middle of the chaos wearing a police uniform and waving her arms to direct traffic. The officer looked calm but focused, her movements deliberate despite the noise surrounding her. Tasha admired her poise. She wondered what it must feel like to hold such responsibility, to step into danger willingly to protect others. But then, something changed. A loud screech pierced the air, followed by panicked screams. Tasha's eyes darted toward the source of the sound, a delivery van speeding uncontrollably down the street. Its tires squealed as the driver struggled to regain control, but it was clear the vehicle was heading straight for the intersection. And right in its path stood the officer. Time seemed to freeze. Tasha's heart pounded in her chest as she processed what was unfolding before her. The van was moving too fast and the officer appeared frozen, unable to react quickly enough. Instinct kicked in, overriding any fear or hesitation. Without thinking twice, Tasha sprinted forward, her legs pumping as fast as they could. Her mind raced with questions. What was she doing? Was this crazy? Could she really stop what was about to happen? Yet none of that mattered. All she knew was that she couldn't stand there and do nothing. As she ran, Tasha pushed past startled pedestrians, her focus laser sharp. The van loomed closer, its headlights glaring like angry eyes. The noise grew deafening, a cacophony of honking horns and terrified shouts. Adrenaline surged through her veins, giving her strength she didn't know she possessed. Finally, she reached the officer, grabbing her arm with both hands and yanking her backward with all her might. They tumbled to the ground together, landing hard on the pavement just as the van roared past them, missing them by mere inches. It crashed into a lamppost seconds later, the impact echoing through the street. For a moment, everything went silent. Tasha lay there, gasping for breath, her body trembling from the shock of what had just happened. Around her, people began to move again, rushing to help the two women. Someone helped Tasha sit up, asking if she was okay. She nodded, though her mind still felt hazy. Nearby, the officer sat on the ground, clutching her belly and looking dazed but unharmed. Tasha stared at her, realizing only now that the woman was pregnant. Her uniform stretched over a rounded stomach, a sign of new life growing within her. The realization hit Tasha like a wave. She hadn't just saved one person today, she'd saved two. Though she didn't fully understand it yet, Tasha's life would never be the same after this moment. What started as an ordinary day had transformed into something extraordinary, setting the stage for changes neither she nor the officer could have anticipated. Little did Tasha know, this single act of bravery would ripple outward, touching lives far beyond the bustling streets of Chicago. The moments following the near collision felt surreal, as if time itself had slowed down to let Tasha process what had just happened. Her heart was still racing, pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears. She sat on the pavement, her hands trembling and her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The adrenaline that had surged through her body during those critical seconds was beginning to fade, leaving behind a mix of shock, exhaustion, and disbelief. Around her, chaos erupted. People rushed toward the scene, some shouting for help, others dialing emergency numbers on their phones. A few bystanders knelt beside Tasha and the officer, checking to make sure they were okay. Someone draped a jacket over Tasha's shoulders, though she barely noticed. Her focus remained fixed on the pregnant officer sitting a few feet away. The woman, still visibly shaken, was holding her belly with both hands, her face pale but determined. Despite the fear in her eyes, there was also gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of what Tasha had done. "Are you hurt?" one of the bystanders asked Tasha gently, his voice cutting through the noise. She shook her head, though her legs felt like jelly and her arms ached from the effort of pulling the officer out of harm's way. "I'm fine," she managed to say, her voice shaky. "Is she okay?" The question hung in the air as everyone turned their attention to the officer. Another bystander crouched beside her, speaking softly. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Are you injured?" I think I'm okay," the officer replied, her voice trembling but steady. She looked up at Tasha, her brown eyes locking onto hers. "You saved us," she said simply, her tone filled with emotion. Tasha blinked, unsure how to respond. Save them? It sounded too dramatic, too heroic. She hadn't thought about saving anyone when she ran toward the van. All she'd known was that she couldn't stand by and watch someone get hurt. Still, she nodded awkwardly, not trusting herself to speak. By now, the sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder as emergency vehicles approached. Paramedics arrived first, quickly assessing the situation. They helped the officer to her feet, guiding her to an ambulance where they could examine her more thoroughly. One of the medics turned to Tasha next, urging her to sit down while they checked her for injuries. Though she insisted she was fine, they insisted on taking her blood pressure and asking a series of questions to ensure she wasn't in shock. As the initial panic subsided, Tasha found herself replaying the incident in her mind. How had she moved so fast? Where had that burst of strength come from? She wasn't particularly athletic or brave. She avoided confrontation whenever possible. Yet in that split second, something inside her had clicked. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just dumb luck. Whatever it was, it had changed everything. While the paramedics worked, curious onlookers began to gather around, whispering among themselves. Some snapped photos with their phones capturing the aftermath of the accident. Others approached Tasha cautiously, thanking her for her bravery. "That was incredible," one woman said, her voice thick with admiration. "You didn't even hesitate." Tasha forced a small smile, though she felt anything but heroic. To her, it hadn't been a calculated decision, it had been pure reflex. But the praise kept coming, each word chipping away at her self-doubt. For years, she'd felt invisible, like no one really noticed her unless she poured their coffee or handed them their change. Now, suddenly, she was the center of attention, surrounded by strangers who wanted to shake her hand or tell her how amazing she was. It was overwhelming, but also strangely validating. Meanwhile, the officer, whose name Tasha learned was Danielle Harper, was being treated nearby. Danielle watched Tasha from a distance, her expression thoughtful. When the paramedics finally allowed her to stand, she walked over to where Tasha sat, leaning heavily on the arm of another medic. "Thank you," Danielle said, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath it. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." Tasha shrugged, uncomfortable with the spotlight. "Anyone would have done the same," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "No," Danielle countered firmly. "Not everyone would have. You risked your life for me, for us. That's not something you see every day." Her words struck a chord deep within Tasha. No one had ever called her brave before. Growing up, she'd always been the quiet one, the observer, the person who stayed in the background while others took charge. Hearing Danielle describe her actions as courageous made her see herself in a new light. Maybe she was stronger than she realized. As the crowd dispersed and the authorities began investigating the crash, Danielle invited Tasha to ride with her to the hospital. "Just to be safe," she explained. "They want to run some tests on me since I'm pregnant, and I'd feel better knowing you're getting checked out too." At first, Tasha hesitated. She didn't want to impose or draw any more attention to herself, but Danielle's persistence and genuine concern won her over. Together, they climbed into the ambulance, the siren wailing softly as it pulled away from the scene. During the ride, Danielle tried to make small talk, clearly eager to distract herself from the lingering anxiety of what had just happened. She told Tasha about her job as a police officer, how she'd joined the force because she wanted to make a difference in her community. She also opened up about her pregnancy, sharing how excited she was to become a mom, but admitting she sometimes worried about balancing work and family life. Tasha listened intently, nodding along as Danielle spoke. There was something comforting about hearing the officer's story, about realizing that even someone as strong and composed as Danielle had fears and doubts. In return, Tasha shared bits and pieces of her own life. Her job at the cafe, her dream of becoming a writer, and her struggles with feeling invisible. By the time they reached the hospital, the two women had formed an unexpected bond. What started as a chance encounter born out of tragedy had blossomed into a connection neither of them had anticipated. As they stepped out of the ambulance, Danielle placed a hand on Tasha's shoulder. "You're extraordinary, Tasha," she said softly. "Don't ever forget that." Tasha didn't respond, but the words lingered in her mind long after they entered the hospital. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. And as she followed Danielle through the hospital doors, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. The days following the incident were a whirlwind for Tasha. The story of her bravery spread quickly, first through local news outlets and then across social media platforms. Videos of the near-miss accident surfaced online, footage captured by security cameras and bystanders' phones, and soon, Tasha's face was everywhere. Headlines like "Heroic Barista Saves Pregnant Cop from Speeding Van" and "Ordinary Woman Performs Extraordinary Act of Courage" dominated newspapers, websites, and TV broadcasts. People couldn't stop talking about her. At first, Tasha felt overwhelmed by all the attention. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, let alone having strangers recognize her on the street. Customers at the cafe where she worked would approach her during her shifts, asking if she was the girl who saved that cop. Some brought flowers or small gifts as tokens of gratitude. Others simply wanted to shake her hand or take a selfie with her. It was flattering, but also exhausting. Tasha had always preferred staying under the radar, content to blend into the background while observing the world around her. Now it seemed impossible to go unnoticed. Despite the chaos, there was one person whose presence grounded Tasha, Danielle Harper. After their trip to the hospital together, Danielle stayed in touch, reaching out regularly to check on Tasha and thank her again for what she'd done. They exchanged numbers and Danielle began calling or texting almost daily. At first, Tasha assumed these conversations would taper off once the initial shock wore off, but Danielle proved otherwise. She genuinely cared about Tasha, not just as the woman who had saved her life, but as a friend. Danielle invited Tasha to visit her at home one weekend, insisting that they needed to spend more time together outside of hospitals and police stations. When Tasha arrived at Danielle's cozy apartment, she found herself relaxing almost immediately. There was something comforting about Danielle's warmth and authenticity. Over cups of tea and plates of homemade cookies, they talked for hours about everything, from Danielle's struggles balancing work and impending motherhood to Tasha's dreams of becoming a writer. Danielle listened intently as Tasha shared her frustrations about feeling stuck in her job and unsure of how to pursue her passion. "You have such a gift," Danielle told her earnestly. "Your ability to notice details, to find meaning in everyday moments, it's rare. You should write about this experience, Tasha. People need to hear your story." Tasha hesitated. Writing about herself felt intimidating, even presumptuous. She'd always imagined her writing taking shape in fictional stories or essays about other people's lives, not her own. But Danielle's encouragement planted a seed in her mind. What if she could use this moment to inspire others? What if sharing her story could help someone else realize their own potential? As their friendship deepened, Danielle became a source of motivation and support for Tasha. She encouraged her to start journaling about her thoughts and experiences, promising that putting words on paper would make the process less daunting. Danielle even offered to read drafts of Tasha's work, providing feedback and cheering her on every step of the way. For Tasha, this newfound mentorship was invaluable. Having someone believe in her so fiercely gave her the confidence to push past her self-doubt and embrace her creativity. Meanwhile, Danielle faced challenges of her own. Though physically unharmed in the accident, the emotional toll lingered. She confided in Tasha about the anxiety she'd been experiencing since the incident, particularly when it came to her pregnancy. "I can't stop thinking about how close I came to losing Grace," Danielle admitted one evening, tears welling up in her eyes. She had already decided to name her unborn daughter Grace, a tribute to the miracle of survival and redemption. Tasha listened quietly, offering comfort without judgment. She understood what it meant to carry fear and uncertainty. Even if her struggles looked different from Danielle's, their bond grew stronger because of these vulnerable moments, each woman leaning on the other for strength and perspective. In addition to supporting Tasha's writing aspirations, Danielle introduced her to new opportunities that expanded her horizons. One day, Danielle invited Tasha to attend a community event hosted by the Chicago Police Department. The gathering aimed to bridge gaps between law enforcement officers and local residents, fostering understanding and trust. Initially hesitant, Tasha agreed to go, curious about what she might learn. To her surprise, she found the experience eye-opening. Officers shared personal stories about their lives beyond the badge, while community members voiced concerns and hopes for the future. Tasha left the event inspired, realizing how powerful storytelling could be in bringing people together. Encouraged by Danielle, Tasha began volunteering at similar events, using her observations as material for her writing. She wrote about the resilience she witnessed in her neighborhood, the quiet acts of kindness that often went unnoticed, and the ways individuals came together to create change. Her pieces resonated with readers, many of whom reached out to express how moved they were by her words. Slowly but surely, Tasha started to see herself not just as a barista or an aspiring writer, but as someone whose voice mattered. As weeks turned into months, Tasha noticed subtle yet profound changes within herself. She no longer felt invisible. Instead, she carried a quiet confidence, knowing that her actions and her words could make a difference. And though she still grappled with moments of doubt, she reminded herself of Danielle's unwavering belief in her. Together, the two women continued navigating their respective journeys, united by the extraordinary connection forged on that fateful afternoon. Little did they know, their partnership was destined to grow even stronger, paving the way for transformations neither could have predicted. As Tasha continued to write, her confidence grew with each passing day. Encouraged by Danielle's unwavering support, she began sharing snippets of her work online, short essays and reflections inspired by the events that had unfolded in her life. At first, she posted anonymously, hesitant to attach her name to something so personal. But Danielle urged her to step out of the shadows. "Your story deserves to be heard," Danielle told her one evening over the phone. "People need to see someone like you, a real person who did something extraordinary." Tasha hesitated but eventually agreed. She wrote a heartfelt piece about the day she saved Danielle, weaving in details about her struggles with invisibility, her dreams of becoming a writer, and how the incident had changed her perspective on life. When she hit publish, her stomach churned with nerves. Would anyone care? Would they think it was too dramatic or self-indulgent? To her astonishment, the response was overwhelming. Within hours, her essay went viral, shared thousands of times across social media platforms. Comments poured in from strangers around the world, praising her courage and vulnerability. Some readers shared their own stories of overcoming fear or finding purpose in unexpected ways. Others simply thanked her for reminding them of the power of kindness and connection. For the first time, Tasha realized that her words had the ability to touch lives, not just hers, but countless others. Inspired by the positive feedback, Tasha kept writing. She documented her journey as a young Black woman navigating life in Chicago, exploring themes of identity, resilience, and community. Her pieces resonated deeply with audiences, especially those who felt unseen or undervalued. One reader commented, "You've given me permission to believe in myself again." Another wrote, "Your words are like a mirror reflecting my own experiences back at me." It wasn't long before Tasha caught the attention of someone unexpected, a literary agent named Marcy Stein. Marcy stumbled upon Tasha's blog while researching emerging voices in contemporary nonfiction. Impressed by her raw honesty and unique perspective, Marcy reached out with an email that left Tasha speechless. "I'd love to help you turn your essays into a memoir. Your voice is exactly what the world needs right now." At first, Tasha thought it was some kind of prank, a memoir about her life. Surely no one would want to read an entire book about her. But Danielle convinced her otherwise. "This is your chance, Tasha," she said firmly during one of their late-night phone calls. "You've always dreamed of being a writer. Don't let fear hold you back." With Danielle cheering her on, Tasha took a leap of faith and signed with Marcy. Over the next several months, she poured her heart into crafting a manuscript titled Invisible No More. The book chronicled her transformation from an ordinary barista feeling lost in the crowd to a courageous hero whose split-second decision sparked a chain reaction of change. It also delved into broader themes, celebrating the strength and beauty of marginalized communities often overlooked by society. Writing. The memoir wasn't easy. There were days when Tasha doubted herself, wondering if she had anything meaningful to say. But every time she faltered, Danielle reminded her why this mattered. "You're not just telling your story," Danielle said. "You're giving a voice to everyone who feels invisible. That's powerful." Meanwhile, Danielle prepared for the arrival of her baby girl, Grace. As her due date approached, she invited Tasha to visit more frequently, eager to include her in this new chapter of her life. During one such visit, Danielle handed Tasha a small box wrapped in pale blue paper. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with the word, "Courage." "I wanted you to have something to remind you of how strong you are," Danielle explained, her eyes glistening with emotion. You've already done so much for us, and I know you'll keep doing amazing things." Tasha hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by gratitude. Their bond had deepened far beyond friendship. They were family now, connected by a shared moment of destiny that neither could have predicted. When Grace was born, Danielle insisted Tasha be the first visitor outside of immediate family. Holding the tiny newborn in her arms, Tasha felt a profound sense of awe. This little girl represented hope, a living reminder of the miracle they'd both survived. As she gazed down at Grace's peaceful face, Tasha whispered softly, "You're going to do great things, sweetheart, just like your mom." Grace's birth marked a turning point for both women. For Danielle, motherhood brought joy and fulfillment, even as it challenged her to adapt to a new rhythm of life. For Tasha, it reinforced the importance of storytelling as a tool for healing and empowerment. Inspired by Grace's arrival, she dedicated Invisible No More to the baby girl whose life she had helped save. "To Grace," she wrote in the dedication, "and to all the invisible heroes who remind us that courage comes in many forms." The publication of Tasha's memoir was met with widespread acclaim. Critics praised her lyrical prose and unflinching honesty, while readers hailed her as a beacon of inspiration. Bookstores across the country hosted signings, drawing crowds eager to meet the woman behind the story. At each event, Tasha stood confidently at the podium, sharing her journey with humility and grace. Danielle attended nearly every signing, beaming with pride as she watched her friend transform into a celebrated author. But Tasha didn't stop there. Determined to use her platform for good, she teamed up with Danielle to launch a nonprofit organization called Voices Rising. The initiative aimed to support single mothers and aspiring writers from underserved communities, providing resources, mentorship, and opportunities for growth. Together, they organized workshops, fundraisers, and community events, fostering a network of individuals committed to lifting each other up. Through it all, Tasha remained grounded, never forgetting where she came from. Though her life had changed dramatically since that fateful afternoon, she stayed true to her roots, continuing to work part-time at the cafe and maintaining her connection to the city she loved. Writing had become her anchor, a way to process the complexities of her journey and share lessons learned along the way. Looking back, Tasha marveled at how one moment, a reckless van, a pregnant cop, and a daring rescue, had set everything in motion. What started as an ordinary day had blossomed into a life filled with purpose, connection, and infinite possibility. And though she still faced challenges, she faced them with the same quiet strength that had carried her through that chaotic intersection months earlier. For Tasha Williams, invisibility was no longer a burden, it was a choice. And she chose, instead, to shine brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow. Years had passed since the day Tasha Williams saved Danielle Harper and her unborn daughter Grace from a speeding van. What began as an ordinary afternoon in downtown Chicago had transformed into a story of courage, connection, and transformation. Not just for Tasha, but for everyone whose lives she touched along the way. Now standing on stage at a packed auditorium, Tasha felt a sense of fulfillment that once seemed unimaginable. The room buzzed with energy as hundreds of people gathered to hear her speak about her memoir, Invisible No More, which had become a national bestseller. Tasha adjusted the microphone, smiling nervously at the sea of faces before her. She spotted Danielle sitting in the front row holding baby Grace, now a lively toddler with curly pigtails and a mischievous grin. Beside them sat Marcy Stein, Tasha's literary agent, who had championed her work from the beginning. Seeing their familiar faces grounded her, reminding her how far she'd come since those days of feeling invisible behind the cafe counter. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Tasha began, her voice steady, despite the butterflies fluttering in her stomach. "When I started writing this book, I never imagined it would lead me here, to moments like this surrounded by so many incredible people. But what I've learned over the years is that life has a funny way of surprising us when we least expect it." She paused, letting her words sink in. Then, with a deep breath, she launched into her story, the same one that had captivated readers across the country. She spoke about the struggles she faced growing up, the quiet dreams she nurtured while serving coffee to strangers, and the pivotal moment that changed everything. Her voice softened as she described the terror of seeing Danielle in the path, of the speeding van, the adrenaline-fueled sprint across the street, and the overwhelming relief when they both emerged unharmed. But saving Danielle wasn't the end of the story, Tasha continued. It was only the beginning. That single act of bravery opened doors I never knew existed. It introduced me to someone who became not just a friend, but family. It gave me the courage to pursue my dream of becoming a writer. And most importantly, it taught me that even the smallest actions can create ripples that reach farther than we ever imagine. The audience listened intently, hanging on her every word. Some nodded in agreement, others wiped away tears. Tasha's vulnerability resonated deeply with them, reminding them of their own untapped potential. When she finished speaking, the room erupted in applause, a wave of sound so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. After the event, Tasha mingled with attendees, signing copies of her book and posing for photos. One woman approached her clutching a dog-eared copy of Invisible No More. Her hands trembled as she handed it to Tasha. "Your story saved me," she said, her voice breaking. "I was ready to give up on my dreams until I read your book. You made me believe I could start again." Tasha hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by gratitude. This was why she wrote, to remind others that they weren't alone, that their stories mattered too. Every interaction like this fueled her determination to keep using her voice for good. Backstage after the event, Danielle waited with Grace perched on her hip. "You were amazing out there," Danielle said, beaming. "Do you realize how many lives you're changing?" Tasha laughed softly, shaking her head. "I still can't believe any of this is real. Sometimes I think back to that day and wonder what would have happened if I hadn't acted. Would I still be working at the cafe, dreaming of a different life? Or would I have found another way to break free?" Danielle tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe, but I like to think things happened exactly as they were meant to. You were put in that moment for a reason, Tasha. Not just to save me, but to inspire others, including yourself." Their conversation shifted to plans for Voices Rising, the nonprofit they co-founded to support marginalized voices. Over the past year, the organization had grown exponentially, hosting writing workshops, mentorship programs, and community events. They'd partnered with schools, libraries, and local businesses to provide resources for aspiring writers and single mothers struggling to balance work and family life. Through it all, Tasha and Danielle remained steadfast in their mission to amplify the stories of those often left unheard. One of their proudest achievements was launching a scholarship fund named after Grace. The Grace Harper Courage Award provided financial assistance to young women pursuing careers in creative fields. At the inaugural ceremony, Tasha stood beside Danielle as they handed the first award to a high school senior who dreamed of becoming a journalist. Watching the girl's face light up with joy reminded Tasha of her own journey and how much she owed to the people who believed in her along the way. As the years went by, Tasha continued to write, publishing essays and articles that explored themes of identity, resilience, and hope. Her work inspired countless readers, sparking conversations about representation and empowerment. Meanwhile, Danielle thrived in her role as a mother and advocate, balancing her responsibilities as a police officer with her passion for mentoring young women through Voices Rising. Together, they proved that friendship could transcend boundaries, uniting two seemingly different lives into a shared purpose. Grace, now 5 years old, adored spending time with Tasha. To her, Tasha wasn't just the woman who saved her mom, it was Auntie Tasha, the storyteller who read her bedtime stories and taught her how to draw pictures of brave heroes. On weekends, the three of them often visited parks or museums, laughing and creating memories that would last a lifetime. For Tasha, these moments were priceless reminders of why she chose to step into the spotlight all those years ago. Looking back, Tasha realized that her journey wasn't just about overcoming fear or achieving success. It was about connection. Saving Danielle had been the catalyst, but the true magic lay in the relationships she built afterward. From Danielle's unwavering support to the strangers-turned friends she met through her writing, Tasha discovered that courage wasn't about doing something extraordinary. It was about showing up, even when you didn't feel ready, and trusting that your presence mattered. On quiet evenings, Tasha liked to sit by her window with a notebook in hand, jotting down ideas for her next project. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars against the night sky, a constant reminder of the vibrant world she called home. Though her life looked nothing like it did before that fateful day, she wouldn't trade it for anything. Every challenge, every triumph, every unexpected twist had led her here, to a place where she no longer felt invisible, but seen, valued, and loved. And as she closed her notebook, smiling at the thought of all the stories yet to be told, Tasha knew one thing for certain: her journey was far from over.